He is the co-author of dozens more. His latest book is Reawakening the Human Spirit. Lance is a riveting speaker and is acknowledged globally as one of our most insightful and original leadership teachers. He is the former CEO of a Fortune 100 company, university professor, award-winning columnist, poet, author, and outdoor athlete. Whew, a lot. He teaches coaches and advises globally for 12 consecutive years. He has been ranked among the top 30 most influential executive coaches and the top 30 most influential leadership experts globally, and guides leadership teams who wish to transform their culture into the most inspirational in their field. And again, boy, great to have you with us, Lance, and really looking forward to our talk today.
Thank you. That's all embarrassing here, you saying that, but thank you.
Yeah, well, all true, all true. So, boy, and I've got many of Lance's books right here in the home. They're books for the library. So, Lance, there's a lot we could start on here, what you call the foundation, that leadership is broken everywhere. I think people can relate to this. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's because we've been working on a very old model, which is motivation, and motivation is fear-based. And we have learned how to do that so successfully throughout our society. So in marketing, buy this product or you'll be ugly. In religion, join this religion or you'll go to hell. In business, do what I say or I'll fire you. In academia, do what I say, pass this exam or I'll fail you, and so on, right? So it's this never ending, and it's the heart of current leadership and human resource policy. But the reality is that we don't actually need leadership. That's the mystery of all of this. We actually want to be inspired. We do everything in our lives because we're inspired to do it. The people that have joined your team did so because they're inspired. If they weren't inspired, they wouldn't have done it. And by the way, when they are no longer inspired, they leave. So it's all about inspiration, and the entire book is about how to get that back. And one of the reasons I wrote it, Steve, is that the world is hurting right now. You know that, I don't need to say that to you, but for so many people, COVID, Ukraine, opioid crisis, climate change, losing a job, inflation. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. There's so much, and we don't feel empowered to deal with it. I can't stop Putin. I can't stop COVID. So given that, how are we going to be inspired in the world? How do we become inspired? How do we inspire others? And how do we inspire the world?
Yeah, boy, and let me just share as well. I'm not just reading materials here as I talk to Lance. We have been friends, colleagues for quite some time, I think well over a decade. And boy, I've taken his training to heart. And man, is he right? You know, we could actually go on for hours on this aspect of inspiration. But boy, you know, if your leadership comes down to just lists with tasks, boy, good luck. You know, it ain't going to work well, because who wants to just sit there and go down task lists? It's as Lance teaches, it's all about, you know, what the heck is the vision that is so powerful that you want to be in doing it, and then you better share that vision so that your team becomes very, very inspired. Because every day, this is the thing, isn't it, Lance? Getting up and just driving, you know, after this.
And also stopping doing what we're doing. So, you know, we spend $170 billion a year on leadership development in North America. We have 240,000 books on Amazon about leadership, and you can't find leadership that works anywhere. Not in academia, not in corporate America, not in politics, not in the police, the Roman Catholic Church, healthcare. I mean, it's a mess. And that's because we continue to follow patterns that were great in the industrial era, but they're just not working anymore. This is a time for the heart.
Boy, so that is so true, and I'm actually seeing from many people other than you the same thing of we need to move from just cognition to the heart, which now this is of course where inspiration takes hold too. So you often then jump, in fact, to the next topic, which is the spark, inspiring self. Do you want to talk a little bit about that here, Lance?
Yes. Well, I've spent a lot of time studying leaders, and I've spent most of my life working with large corporations. I ran a Fortune 100 company. My clients are people like Microsoft and Starbucks and Kaiser Permanente and so on. So I work with those folks every day. And over the years, it's been very successful. Some of these companies are amazing. And I coached some of the leaders in those companies, and many of them now have retired as multimillionaires. So they did well. The company did well. The C-suite leaders I coached did well, but the rest of the people didn't. And this troubles me. This is really what the Great Resignation is all about. We are doing things in organizations that are repelling people. And so that's just in the workplace, but we also do it everywhere else too. So the broad theory of this book is this. We need to fill up our own well first. You can't inspire other people if you're empty. And we will tell each other that we can do this. And of course, most of us can for short periods of time, but you can't do it forever. You can't keep doing things that are not in you. So we need to fill up our own well first. And we do that with three things. One, knowing why we're here. It's amazing how few people know that. Why are you on the planet? Well, I'm on the planet in order to earn a good salary, provide for my family, get my kids through university, get a pension, and retire. Now, that's not why you're here. There's a reason you're here, and it's a big purpose, whatever it is.
Right.
And so what's one thing? Secondly, we need a dream. Every organization, every person needs a dream. We've lost our dream. Mission, vision, and values is all clunky language. We need a dream. People like Starbucks have a dream. Patagonia has a dream. You and I perhaps have dreams. You have one, I'm sure, for humanities team, as I do for my organization. So a dream is what gets us up in the morning. And then lastly, the third thing is the removal of violent language from our vocabulary. We're trying to inspire each other. And if we use the language of war, we're doing the opposite. So it's amazing how often we say, it blows me away, that blew the doors off. I'd kill for your beautiful hair, Steve. I'd kill or chocolate cake to die for. I mean, there are all these phrases that we use. But what happens with us is that when we use those phrases, we're actually changing the biochemistry in the other person. Because at the subconscious level, biochemistry gets tripped. If I say I'd kill for your hair, that's one thing. If I'd say I love your hair, that's a different thing. And different chemistries will be released. So what we're actually doing together, we are one. Because when I connect with you, I change you as you do me. So we do those three things: know who we are, understand what our dream in our lives is, and helping others to do the same, of course, and removing the language of war from our vocabulary so that we can be inspiring in our communications. Those are three things. They're not the only things, but if we do those three things, we'll fill up our own well. And that's called the spark. And the sequence of the book is the spark, the flame, and the torch. The spark is filling up your own well. The flame is being an inspiration for others. And the torch is inspiring the world.
Yeah, beautiful. Boy, and so important, this whole aspect that you're bringing in, the violent language, because that oneness, of course, is a basis for your work and our work. And in oneness,
Right.
where with this universal intelligence that it's animating all of life, well, you know, if it's just one presence, one body, cosmos, universe, whatever term we want to call, why are we like using violent, warlike language? Why are we even in competition, right? One of the things, just on a personal note here, I liked Obama in his years as president, but the one thing that really I always wondered about is he would always say we're got to go in for the fight and this and that, using this kind of language, and it creates polarity when we say we need to fight over here, then this side wants to fight, and then we don't go anywhere.
Well, as Monty Roberts, you probably know of him, the horse whisperer, he says, you know, violence has never solved anything, and it never will.
Yeah.
So, you know, the old days of roping a horse and breaking a horse in and so on, they're over. You know, intelligent people these days use what he would call, and others now have called, the horse whisperer. And he speaks a language to the horses called equus, and he inspires them. And I've been with him when he's done this. He goes out into the backcountry and picks up a Mustang, ropes the Mustang, brings it back to the arena. In half an hour, he's riding it. That comes from inspiration.
Yeah.
He inspires the horse to connect.
Beautiful. Boy,
So, by the way, they
another
become
real
one.
example.
Yeah.
So to viewers too that maybe are just coming in, we're talking about a new book of Lance Secretan's. It's called Reawakening the Human Spirit. I'm guessing people can pre-order now on Amazon, Lance?
They can. It's a bit wonky there at the moment. It's just released. You can order it from our website. On Amazon, you will find an Audible version and a Kindle version. The physical version is still trying to get placed there. So that's going to be in the next few days.
Okay, good. So Reawakening the Human Spirit by Lance Secretan. This is what we're talking about. A new book out. Boy, you're going to want to check this out. Yeah. So, and you can go to lancesecretan.com, right, and just start reading about this book. Right, Lance?
Yes, secretan.com, or you can go to reawakeningthehumanspirit.com.
Okay, perfect. So you mentioned earlier we're kind of stepping down through this vertically, and you were bringing in that next step, the flame, inspiring others. Do you want to just go a little deeper on that one, Lance?
Sure. You know, we did some research some years ago. We've done a lot of research, and I've written a lot about what leaders did, what made them special. One of the things, by the way, was that they all knew why they were here, all of them. Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa. You ask them why you're here on the planet, they'd give you an answer immediately. Most people can't do that. The flame is, again, a result of research we did a long time ago. We asked people, what don't you like about people? And they said, we don't like people who are cowards. We don't like people who are phony. We don't like people who are selfish, self-serving. We don't like people who lie. We don't like people who rule with fear. And we don't like idiots, incompetent people. 6 things. And we said, well, why don't we just do the opposite? And the opposite turns out to be courage, authenticity, service, truthfulness, love, and effectiveness. Now, those 6 become the Castle Principles because there's an acronym: courage, authenticity, service, truthfulness, love, and effectiveness. And you know, I must tell you a little story. So you know Marianne Williamson very well. She's been on your show. I was on her podcast the other day, and I was reminding her that, I don't know, 20 years ago, my wife and I were staying with her when she lived in Detroit. She was running the church there. And we're having dinner at her home, and I'm so excited because I've got this new idea. It's called the Castle Principles, and it's an acronym. Let me tell you what it stands for. And she said, no, just a minute. Stop. Let me guess. C is for courage. A is for authenticity. S is for service. T is for truthfulness. L is for love. And E is for energy. And I said, wow, that's amazing. Energy is not what I chose. Good choice, but it's not the word. But all the others are right. How did you do that? And she said, well, 2 things. One, I know your work, so I can cheat. You know, I know where you're going. I know you're not going to talk about guns and war. But more importantly, there's nothing here new to learn.
Yeah.
That was an amazing revelation to me, and not something I hadn't realized. We are born courageous, but we lose it over our lives so that we comply with what society wants and so that we don't get banged up at meetings and so on. We're born authentic. I mean, think about a baby. They're courageous, they're authentic, they serve, they even lead. They don't know how to speak yet. They come out of the womb and they start yelling, and it works, right? So we had all this. All we've got to do now is remember it. We forgot how to be courageous. We forgot how to be authentic. Nothing new to learn. And one other interesting thing about this, pedagogically, it's quite a remarkable thing. Millions of people use this all over the world. There are companies running on this machine, basically, of Castle Principles. And one of the things I like to ask people, if you did 7 habits for highly effective people, did you go to a course? If so, do you remember them? Most people have been to a course. Do you remember them? Most people can't remember them. I've been with people who heard me speak about the Castle Principles 20 years ago, and they're still living them because it's sticky. And the reason it's sticky is because this is who we are. It's already in us. We just have to dial it up. We'll never get there all the way. We can be more of all those things, though. If we live the Castle Principles, we'll inspire other people, because what happens is we love people who are courageous, Steve. We love people who are authentic. We love people who serve. We love people who tell the truth. We love people who are loving, and we love people who are competent and effective and get things done.
Boy, I am so with you. And my little story on this one, Lance, is, of course, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, humanities team is, and so we do a number of events, you know, as a nonprofit, including fundraising. And, you know, I was out kind of in search for 6 months last year for just all the ways when I was doing fundraising, how I'd want to do that. And then, boy, when I landed on it, I was so clear which is, it's your castle principles, but it's just going, no scripts, no teleprompter, just your why. What is your why? You just speak. You speak about what that is. Why are you doing this? And you just put that out there. And you know what? It's like grabbing lightning bolts and you're just throwing them. You're just throwing them. This is what the castle thing is.
Yes.
If you do that, and then you don't need any points written down. You don't need to write anything down.
Right.
This is the center of who you are. And it's incredibly powerful when you do that. And that's what your castle principles are.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's the essence of living right. So if one of the other concepts in the foundation part of the book, which is the early part of the book, there's a whole bunch of things that I enumerate, and I won't go into them in detail here. But for instance, I talk about stress, which is a myth. Stress is simply a description of how we react to an event. So you can be caught up in traffic and you can yell and scream and wave your hands and flip the bird and make sure the other driver knows what an idiot he is, in your opinion. Or you can just say, smile and be grateful for your life and carry on. It's your choice, but you chose stress. So stress is not necessary. So we move that out of our lives. It helps a lot of other things. And the other thing I wanted to mention was another concept I've introduced in the front there is about the social self and the essential self. The social self calibrates outside. So we measure externally. Will I succeed? Will I be loved? Will I get rich? Will I have a house in the country? Will I get a new car? Will I get a promotion? Will people love me? Will I be approved? All these external measures. Do I look good? And then there's the essential self, which asks different questions and doesn't calibrate with success. It calibrates with joy. And it asks different questions. Will this serve? Will this make the world a better place? Does this bring joy? Does this make people happy? Does it align with my values? Different questions. So the key here is who's speaking? When we're doing what we're doing right now, for example, who's speaking? Is it my social self or my essential self? If it's my social self, it's going to be about ego, about positioning, making sure that everything's right, that I'm dressed properly and everybody loves me and all that. If it's about essential self, it's about, I want to share a message that I think is important that will change the world. That's a different place to come from.
Yeah. So true. And here I think of, the smaller self with a lowercase s, and then the larger self with a capital S. And that larger self, capital S, is where we really deeply understand and are living from this basis that I am a part of this whole. And if we don't know it here, we don't take the time to learn it and live into it here in this physical life, we will, assuredly, when we go to the non-physical realm. Let me tell you, that's just all that is.
Yeah.
And if people haven't been around the NDEers and near-death experience and mediums to understand that, I encourage you to understand that, because this is where we go, and it's a back and forth. So why we'd want to spend any time in the little self that isn't really that's not our true self, I would never know. So I'm so with you, and it just feels good.
We have
this whole
where
we're in
little
service
exercise that we do. We call it a divine conversation, and it goes like this: you're in heaven, wherever that is for you. And I like the way you frame this. Whatever that means for you, and God, whatever that means for you too. You're in the boardroom, and God comes into the boardroom and says, "Steve, I've got this little project going on it's called Earth. I haven't finished it yet. It's sort of in the middle of being done, but I need you to fix it, okay? So I'm going to send you to Earth for 100 years. Poof, you go to Earth.
Right.
And God says, you've got everything you need from me. Yeah, just ask, right? Okay, 100 years go by, you come back. God calls you in the boardroom. How did you do? The answer to that question is your destiny.
Right,
That's
there you go.
What's in that front section, the spark of the book. How do you identify your destiny? That's part of what we call the why we do. Why you're here, how you're going to be, and what you're going to do. One other thing I'd just mention about this is kind of cool. We have something called, one of the books I wrote in 2002 is called Spirit at Work. It's a set of cards. And we turned this at the beginning of the pandemic into a mobile app. You can download it in the Android or Apple store. It's free. There is an upgrade that will cost you, but you can access it free. But one of the things it does that's really interesting, you shake the phone and it shuffles a card for you. And all the cards are all the values that we teach in our work, which is called high ground leadership. When you shake the phone, it picks a card, and then you have a to-do list on the app and a to-be list. And the to-do list, normal things you will write down that you've got to do today, but your to-be list is the card you pulled. And one of the little tricks we build into this app is that you may not like that. So you may pull courage and say, oh, I don't think I want to be courageous today. I want to choose another card. But it won't let you. So what you end up doing is it says, this is your to-be card. This is how you're going to be today. There are 77 cards. So you have a chance to do something different every single day in your life. But if you do that, you'll change everything.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well,
it's called Spirit at Work, by the way, just so that people know how to find it.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's a beautiful exercise. Very nice. And as I perceive it on that God in the boardroom thing, my own vision is that you, Lance, and many of us here, this is exactly what happened. We were on all sides of the universe, and then this meeting was called. We got a little trouble down there on Earth, and there are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds, I don't know. There are a lot of people here embodied now that are a part of that whole exercise, where we're becoming conscious, really understanding how ultimate reality really works and living into it with doing the things that we're talking about here now. For people that are arriving late, we're talking about Lance Secretan's new book, Reawakening the Human Spirit. So you can go to that Reawakening the Human Spirit website for the book, or you can go to secretan.com to learn about this book. Wow, sounds fascinating. Sounds like you're really pulling a lot of your work together, including just these new inspirations that have come to you that are packaged into this book, huh, Lance?
Well, I think too that what I've been trying to do here is, this is a book for people. It's not for corporations or leaders. It includes corporations or leaders. But one of the really strange things that is interesting, I think, for all of us to appreciate is that we have created in business an alien world that doesn't exist anywhere else. So we use acronyms and buzzwords and, reaching out to each other and being granular and all that sort of stuff, sort of cliquey words. But we also do a lot of other things, like we have mission statements and vision statements and all that stuff, which we don't do anywhere else. And I can walk down my driveway and I can say to some stranger, I love you, no problem. But if I do that at work, I got a major problem. And we do performance appraisals at work, which is the anathema to anybody who's in a leadership role. Would you do that with your spouse? Would you sit down with your spouse and say, hi, honey, it's that time of year. We're going to have a little conversation about your key performance indicators. That's a buzzword. And your budgets and so on. I mean, you wouldn't get half those words out of your mouth. So we have created this world that is so foreign and alien to everything that is natural for us. And here's an interesting point. You know that we never used the word work until the 1600s? It wasn't in the English language because there wasn't anywhere to go. You didn't go to work. There's no place to go to. If you were a blacksmith, it was in the back of your house. So then Shakespeare used the word for the first time that's recorded, at least in the English language. And then, of course, we started going to work, driving to work, going to a factory, going to an office. Then the COVID happened. Well, what happened? We went backwards to the 1600s. All of a sudden, we're working from home again, just like we used to 500 years ago. This is our natural state. It's not natural for us to all gather ourselves up, put ourselves in a little steel machine and whiz it down the highway to another place and then park it all day. I mean, that's just not who we are. And so leaders are trying to bring people back to work, but they're just pushing against the grain. This is not going to be the way it's going to be going forward.
Yeah, well, I'm so with you. So what a beautiful conversation. Wow. Where we talk about all of these things that we can do to make our lives more rich, more prosperous, more abundant, more loving, more in service. And of course, when we do that individually, this microcosm, macrocosm thing happens. Guess what? This whole world starts becoming these things that we're talking about. And when we were in the green room here, Lance and I, before we came out, we were sharing what we all know to be true, right? That, boy, we are in that moment where this shift, this pivot is so necessary. And fortunately, it is happening. It is happening. But you viewers, you're here watching, not by accident. You're part of this, right? We're all doing this together. That's how we're affecting this change. We're in Humanities Team, we're saying to make conscious living pervasive worldwide by 2040, because this whole existential crisis thing, we need to wind those terms down. We don't need to have that here on this planet. And if we live consciously, do these things we're talking about, that this book brings in, Reawakening the Human Spirit, we mend that. We become alchemists, healers. We go down a whole different path, and that's ultimately what our lives are about. We don't even call it work, do we, Lance?
Right, exactly. If you're inspired, right? And I think that COVID, horrible though it has been, and painful and miserable for so many people, especially those that have lost people to the disease, for all that, it's also changed everything. And so, for the good, I think, in lots of ways, because it does teach us how to interact with each other in a different way, and it does raise a whole lot of questions. For example, I don't want to be in the commercial real estate game these days. That would be the worst place to make a living. But I could repurpose all those downtown buildings into homes for homeless people. Be a fantastic contribution for society, because we're one.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Boy, beautiful. Beautiful. Well, those will be some of our last words here. So go to, again, Secretan.com to learn just lots more about this book, Reawakening the Human Spirit, about Lance Secretan and his work, his coaching, his seminars, his books, retreats, etc., etc. Lance, you're making a real contribution in the world. We sure appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, Steve. Thank you for doing brilliant work that you're doing and building such a great effort. I knew you when you first came from, I think, California to Colorado, and I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if he can pull this off. This is a big job. And sure enough, there we are. Good for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. And it's with viewers, people that are here, we're all doing it together, and we're just, we created a streaming platform where we've got lots of this incredible content. Lance, if you ever want to talk about streaming content, we should talk. And of course, our Global Oneness Summit and just all of these different things we do, they're all really under this heading of changing humanity's future, which is about living consciously, and we can use different terms here too: awakening to oneness, living into unity consciousness, the new spirituality. There are lots of terms, but these terms all get at what Lance and I have been talking about, where it's really a love-based world. It's not a fear-based world. It's inspiring, not managing. All of these things that Lance is bringing in. So it's been way too long, and we're just real grateful to have you with us here today, Lance. Thank you.
Well, you know that I'm on your team, and so we've done teaching together, and we can do more of that. And I'm ready to contribute to the work you're doing anytime you want.
Sounds good. Well, we will be on your doorstep, I'm sure, here before long, Lance. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
and
you,
boy,
Steve.
this book,
Namaste.
Godspeed to this book, Reawakening the Human Spirit. Godspeed to you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
friends. Yeah, very nice to be with you. Have a great rest of the day, friends.